Today, we are at Arlington Municipal Airport here in Arlington, Washington, and I'm here for a couple of reasons. The first is to visit a very special airplane that is housed here, and the second is to break out my new camera. I recently acquired a Pentax K1000, my favorite 35mm film camera of all time, and the airplane in question today is pretty appropriate for that. For about the last month or so, I've been trying to figure out a way to tell the story of this airplane. This Douglas DC-3 has been sitting here for decades, and it has a very long and interesting history, and I really wanted to put something special together to tell the story of this airplane, since it seems to be kind of long forgotten at this point, and I had the hardest time figuring out what I wanted to do. I sat in front of my editing program for weeks, just couldn't quite pull the story together because there are quite a few little plot holes here and there, a lot of things that aren't known about this exact airplane, and a lot of things that are unanswered to this day, a lot of things that are very uncertain about the future of this airplane. And yesterday I decided to just call Arlington, figured I'd just come down and tell you guys the entire story with the airplane in question right here for us. So I think we'll just start at the beginning. This airplane was built in 1944. It was built for World War II as a Douglas C-47A. You can actually see on the tail here, let's see if we can get a good shot of it. Right there is the original, right here is the original serial number for this airplane, which is 4315728. And it's not currently registered to that number. It is currently registered to its civilian number, which is November 63440. And it's currently registered. This airplane's registration is kept up to date, despite its condition being a little bit less than airworthy, I'd say. To say the very least, a little bit less than airworthy. This airplane has been pretty much just sitting here, but the registration has been kept up to date by the owner. Now, this airplane isn't registered to a person. This airplane is registered to a company in Anchorage, Alaska. And when I went through the FAA's website and started looking into who might own this airplane to try and get some information on it, just because I wanted to know more about it, wanted to ask the owner, wanted to find out who it was, I found no information on this company, nor did I find any information on it ever existing. So who really knows who's keeping the registration up to date on this airplane? Who knows what its history is or what the future plans are for it? There's really not a lot out there. It's just kind of here. But hey, still registered. Now, since the airplane is registered as civilian and the only numbers on it are its military registration, you may be wondering what brought it that tail number, that civilian tail number, that commercial tail number, if this is a C-47, right? Well, this airplane, directly after the war, went into service with Southwest Airways. Not the Southwest you're thinking of. It's not this one. It's this one. It's the small airline that flew mail in the 30s and 40s. And this airplane flew mail straight out of World War II all over the United States. Southwest Airways flew this airplane as NC-63440 until 1958, when it was sold to Pacific Airlines. From 1958 to 1963, Pacific Airlines flew this DC-3 flying passengers, and in 1964, it was then sold to a turkey farm. And you may be able to see just behind me, right on top of the fuselage of the airplane, you can see a little scoop on the top there. I'll insert a little clip here to show you exactly what it is. That scoop was added when it was sold to Amarine Turkey Farm to refrigerate the cargo hold so that they could transport frozen turkeys with this airplane. And this airplane flew frozen turkeys all over the country, out of Southern California, or middle of the coast of California, just south of San Francisco. So where does that leave us? This airplane has flown passengers, it's flown in a war, and it's flown turkeys, it's flown cargo. What is the big significant thing that this airplane did that makes this story so worth telling? Because this is the same story as so many other DC-3s out there. These are aircraft that have been used for a very, very long time. They've been flying commercially since the 30s. So what's so special about this one? Well, in 1966, this airplane was converted to private use for Ronald Reagan. This was Ronald Reagan's private campaign aircraft during his candidacy for California governor in 1966. And the interior of the aircraft, after it was bought from the turkey breeding farm, it was converted to a VIP transport, and this is the airplane that Ronald Reagan flew all around California when he was campaigning to be the governor of California. This is the airplane that he flew. So why is it here? The short answer is he wasn't running for president. It wasn't that significant of an airplane. In 1966, DC-3s were still a very, very, very common sight, and these were flying all over the place. So once his campaign was over, this airplane was put back into commercial service and pretty much just kind of looked at as a part of the rest of the fleet, a part of every other airplane that was out there transporting whatever, whether it was passengers or cargo. It was just another DC-3, another workhorse. It wasn't, you know, anything significant at the time because, of course, Ronald Reagan hadn't become president yet. So technically, this airplane hadn't flown a US president. It had flown a future US president. Directly following Reagan's involvement with this airplane is when things started to get a little bit hazy. In 1967, the year after this airplane was used as a transport for Ronald Reagan, it was involved in its first incident. The incident ended up being a misjudgment of speed and distance and altitude. The pilots were blamed, and the airplane overran the runway on landing and nosed over. So no, this is not the original nose. By the end of October in 1968, this airplane was reissued a new serial number and reclassified by Douglas as a DC-3C and was put back into commercial service. It was given its certificate of airworthiness, rebuilt, and put back into service, registered as a DC-3C as N63440. The following year, Amherst Airways bought the airplane and put it into service in 1969 and moved the airplane to be based in Buffalo, New York. In March of 1971, this airplane was purchased by Angler Investments and leased to Carib West Airways, where it flew passengers until 1975. Now this is where things get really, really, really rocky with this airplane. So I'm gonna have my notes here. Don't mind me if I'm looking down and reading off of them, but I just wanna make sure I don't miss anything, because this is where things get confusing, rocky, and really start to look weird for this airplane. So in 1975, the airplane was sold to a John Aldrich. I have found pretty much zero information on this guy or what he did with the airplane or where he was based, but he lived in Anchorage, Alaska. To my knowledge, the airplane never made it to Anchorage. The airplane was moved from Buffalo to here, where I think maintenance was going to be done on it, and then it just never left. The proper removal date of this airplane from service was October 1978. So sometime in those 3 years, between 1975 and 1978, this airplane was doing something. There's got to be something that it was doing between when it was purchased and when it was officially removed from service, because otherwise, why buy it? And why only buy this DC-3, fly it once to one airport, leave it there, and then never fly it again, and then take it out of service officially 3 years later? It doesn't make a whole lot of sense, and it's where things just started to get really, really confusing when I was researching this topic. Now, in 1978, when this airplane was removed from service, theoretically, that's when it was purchased by its current owner. Although we really don't know what that current owner is, because I've found zero information on this company. I'm gonna keep it private just because I don't want people going out there and messaging this guy, you know, or trying to hunt this guy down and try and buy this airplane. Of course, it's up to the owner what happens to it, unfortunately. But in that case, between 1978, when this airplane was removed from service, and the mid-80s, when it was last worked on, there's not really any information out there on what it was doing, what the plans were with it, what the owner intended with it, why it was bought, why it was purchased, what anything about it. I found very, very little information, and that's why it took me so long to put this story out there, is because there's a lot of holes in this story. There are a lot of things that just aren't known, because there's pretty much no way to contact the owner, and the airport's just been like, it's been here, but we don't know anything about it. No one goes out to it, no one touches it, no one does anything with this airplane, so no one really knows what was happening until the mid-80s with this airplane and why it was purchased by its current owner. The other thing that made getting information about this airplane very, very difficult is it was pretty much looked at as a workhorse. It's what it was. It was flying commercially, and it was looked at as pretty much any other commercial airliner at the time. So when I went to look for what this airplane had been doing, it's not like people had been taking pictures everywhere it went and had been documenting absolutely everything it did, because to them it didn't really matter. It was kind of the equivalent of any regular 737 these days to us. So there's pretty much no information until 1992. I have one photo that I found of this exact airplane still in its commercial colors here at Arlington. So this paint that's on it right now is not the original C-47 paint. It's been painted several times for several different airlines, but this paint that's on it right now was put on by the current owner. So who knows what the idea was. I'm guessing that it was bought by someone private, and they wanted to put it back in the air as kind of a historical piece, and then maybe something happened and they weren't able to do so. So I seriously don't know. You can see the airplane's deteriorating. It sits out here unprotected from the elements and whatnot in our harsh winters we have up here in Washington. You can see as other airplanes fly by, you can see it's seen better days. And honestly, looking at this paint, it looks like they painted it with like a paintbrush and like house paint. This does not look like aircraft paint. It does not look that precise. It looks like someone took a paintbrush to it, which is a really, really weird situation. But the thing that trips me up the absolute most about this airplane is how incredibly complete it is. Everything is here. Most abandoned DC-3s, I won't call this one abandoned because who knows, the owner could still be out there. There could be something in the works for this airplane, but who knows. It's been sitting here like this for decades, since the 90s. Jesus, Cessna gonna be loud today. Great flight conditions though, he's probably having a blast. However, the main thing with this airplane is it could be restored. I've been, of course, down the many YouTube rabbit holes of aircraft restoration, and I've seen people transform significantly worse into fully functional airworthy airplanes. I mean, just go look at what the people over at Buffalo Airways and Mikey McBrien did with their DC-3 that they saved for plane savers. That airplane was in significantly worse condition with significantly less left when they got it. And this airplane is all here. Everything's here. The whole airplane is complete. There are maybe a couple things missing, but they're small. As you can see, this engine is missing most of the cowgills on one side of it, but the other side has plenty. So this is a fairly complete Douglas DC-3, totally restorable, that is sitting abandoned, owned by someone who doesn't visit it and has pretty much no contact with anyone, it seems. And there's really no set future for this airplane. Who knows what will happen to it? Who knows if it will ever be in the air again? Who knows if some other DC-3 owner will come and contact the owner and say, hey, can I get some parts off of that? And who knows what the owner will say. At least for me, I really hope that the airplane is put back in the air someday. This is a perfectly restorable airframe. It's sure, it's been sitting out in the elements for a very long time, but again, worse have been done. And this is a Douglas DC-3. There are a lot of people that really love these airplanes out there. There are a lot of people that work on and restore and fly these airplanes out there, and there are tons of them still flying today. And it would be really nice to see this one that's been sitting here for a long time have the same fate. So that's pretty much it. That's the story of this airplane. That's why it's here. Again, there's not really any one reason why it's here, but that's what this airplane is and what it's doing. And I really hope that one day I can eventually see an end to the story of this airplane instead of being caught in the middle of what seems to be a very, very interesting life for an airframe. So thank you guys so much for watching. I'm gonna get a few more shots of this airplane here. If you guys want to see some of my other aviation photography as well as future aviation content, you can follow me here on YouTube as well as Instagram and Twitter. I am on there constantly. I'm very, very seldom put out YouTube content anymore, but when I find something interesting, I want to tell people about it, and every once in a while I do. So thank you guys so much for watching. Don't forget to like, subscribe, comment, all of those things, and I will see you guys in the next video.